Do you know how many nuclear weapons Ukraine had when the Soviet Union broke up 30 years ago? Russia has 4,500 nuclear warheads today. But then Ukraine had 5,000 nuclear weapons. Ukraine had long-range ballistic missiles capable of carrying thermonuclear warheads. What happened that this most powerful country has become so weak that today it is unable to defend itself and is forced to beg for cooperation from European Union? Who is responsible for taking the world to the brink of nuclear war? Russia or America? What are possible consequences of the Ukraine and Russia war? Today, we would try to sort out these questions. You are watching Tarazoo English and I am Bilal Ghauri. After separation from the Soviet Union, the Ukrainian leadership decided to give up its nuclear weapons and make the country a peaceful state. Vladimir Tolubko, a former nuclear base commander, now a member of the Ukrainian parliament, strongly opposed the decision, insisting that Ukraine must have nuclear weapons in order to maintain balance of power. But Ukraine, Belarus and Kazakhstan signed the NPT, Nuclear Proliferation Treaty. The talks were first held in Moscow between the United States, Russia and Ukraine. And then in 1994 in Budapest, the capital of Hungary, under the agreement which was called Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurance, the United States, Britain and Russia assured that if Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons, its sovereignty would be respected. No country would commit aggression, and if any country invaded Ukraine, the United States, Russia and Britain will work with the United Nations to ensure Ukraine's defense. Ukraine returned nuclear weapons to Russia after securing defense guarantees under the Budapest Memorandum. In May 1996, Ukraine handed over the last shipment of nuclear weapons to Russia and the issue was settled. It was considered a great success of US President Bill Clinton. When Ukraine was being persuaded to sign the NPT, Nawaz Sharif was the Prime Minister of Pakistan. But Nawaz Sharif and Benazir Bhutto, who became Prime Minister after him, refused to give in to the pressure and Pakistan never signed NPT. Ukraine, who was deceived by international community to sign NPT. If we try to compare its military power with Russia, there seems no comparison. The 64-kilometer long military convoy of Russian forces is located 30 kilometers from the Ukrainian capital with 1,90,000 troops, while Russia has a total of 9 lakh troops. Ukraine has 132 warships, while Russia has 1,391 fighter jets. Russia has 49 submarines, while Ukraine has none. Ukraine has only 55 helicopters, while Russia has 948 helicopters. Ukraine spends 4.7 billion US dollars on defense, while Russia has a defense budget of $45.8 billion. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly called on NATO to help, and European countries have relied on rhetoric rather than action. Few viewers may get confused about the names of Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. It is actually the same name derived from Prince Volodymyr, who ruled the region during the 10th century. In Russian, it is called Vladimir, while in Ukrainian language, it is called Volodymyr. Anyhow, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly called on NATO to impose a no-fly zone on Ukraine so that Russia's air forces does not carry out bombings. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has responded by saying that NATO will not establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine as it would trigger a border conflict and could end in a full-fledged war.
Allies agree that we should not have NATO planes operating over Ukrainian airspace or NATO troops on Ukrainian territory.
What will be the outcome of this war? We will try to find out answer to this question, but first we will try to find out who is responsible for this situation. You may have heard the English phrase, the first casualty when war comes is truth. The same thing happened after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We are being told that Vladimir Putin is a contemporary Hitler. He is mentally sick. He is pushing the world towards another world war. And everyone have to pay the cost of his aggressive and expansionist ambitions. Whether Ukraine joins NATO or not, what does Russia have to do with it? Does Vladimir Putin is dawn of this region? But the point is not so simple and straightforward. In 1962, when Fidel Castro was the ruler of Cuba, the USSR installed nuclear-capable missiles there. Why did US President Kennedy threaten war, and why was the world pushed towards the brink of a nuclear war? Because the United States was only 90 miles away from Cuba and could be targeted by these missiles. Unlike Cuba, Ukraine and Russia share a border. The Russian rulers view Ukraine as their backyard, just as Pakistan views Afghanistan as its backyard. So Pakistan considered it a threat to its national security when USSR army landed in Kabul. The general impression is that the responsibility for the current situation lies entirely with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, who considers himself an Iron Man and wants to take Russia to new heights. But the reality is quite different. The Western leaders who have made Ukraine a battleground in the pursuit of more land are to be blamed for the situation. The question is how the European Union and NATO paved the way for this war. To find the answer, we have to turn the pages of history and find out how NATO's sphere of influence gradually grew. After World War II, when the USSR emerged victorious, in 1949 the United States and Canada formed a military alliance with 10 European countries, and it was named the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. The most important article in the NATO Charter is Article 5, which states that if any member state is attacked, all other countries will defend it together. The Netherlands, Portugal, Iceland and Luxembourg became part of military alliance. Greece and Turkey joined NATO in 1952 and West Germany joined the North Atlantic Treaty in 1955. In 1955, several Eastern European countries joined the USSR to form a parallel military alliance against NATO, and it was called Warsaw Pact. The map you see behind me at the moment is perfect reflection of NATO's expansionist ambitions and show how NATO's sphere of influence gradually grew. After fall of USSR in December 1991, Ukraine, Belarus, Central Asian states and Baltic states such as Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia became independent. The allegiance of the countries involved in the Warsaw Pact were changed, thus reducing Russia's influence and expanding NATO's sphere of influence. Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Slovenia, Hungary, Romania, Albania, Northern Mesopotamia and Bulgaria were incorporated into NATO. Russia has shown restraint and tolerance while these states were being incorporated into NATO because on one hand they were very small countries and on the other hand Russia was still defeated and in no position to react. But then something happened that infuriated the Red Bear. After the end of the Cold War, an attempt was made to bring NATO to Russia's doorstep. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization met in Bukhara in April 2008, following which it was stated that NATO welcomed Ukraine's and Georgia's Euro-Atlantic aspirations for membership into NATO. We agreed today that these countries will become members of NATO. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister, in a quick response to the Bukhara conference statement, said that Georgia and Ukraine's membership in alliance is a huge strategic mistake, which will have the most serious consequences. Mr. Putin also warned European countries that Georgia and Ukraine becoming part of NATO is direct threat to Russia. Western nations ignored these warnings and continued their efforts to peel off these countries from the communist bloc and incorporate into Western bloc. Russia fought a 5-day war with Georgia in August 2008. but the situation did not reach to the point of no return. Ukrainian President Yanukovych, who was negotiating to join NATO and the European Union, was offered a good deal by Russian President Vladimir Putin. And ultimately he refused to join the Western Bloc. At this stage, Uncle Sam decided to use its most sophisticated and lethal weapon of democracy and turn the tables around. Protest against Ukrainian President Yanukovych began as a part of well thought out plan. The protests gradually intensified. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a $15 billion aid to Ukraine, but the situation worsened. During January and February 2014, the protests turned violent. On 22 February 2014, pro-Russian President Yanukovych was forced to flee the country and seek refuge in Russia. Following departure of Yanukovych, elections were held on 25th May 2014, in which Petro Poroshenko was elected president of Ukraine. And in the next presidential election, a comedian, Volodymyr Zelensky, was elected president. When Yanukovych was overthrown, Russia occupied the Crimean Peninsula. Crimea Peninsula in the Black Sea was ceded to Ukraine by Nikita Khrushchev and now was taken back through a referendum. In protest, Russian President Vladimir Putin also annulled the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, which promised to respect Ukraine's sovereign state. The people of Ukraine are divided and dispersed in many respects. The people of eastern Ukraine speak Russian and have sympathies with Russia, while the people of western Ukraine speak Ukrainian and are attracted towards Western countries. Residents of eastern Ukraine consider themselves independent and sovereign, and there is no government threat, while the Ukrainian state considers them rebels. But no serious attempt was made to crush the uprising by force. But when the rebels shot down the Malaysian airliner MH17 on July 17, 2014, the Ukrainian government launched a military operation against the rebels. Then Russia sent his troops to fight along with the rebels, and later there was an attempt to resolve the issue through negotiations, but the situation worsened. What could be possible outcome of the war between Ukraine and Russia, and what is the logical solution to this problem? The Europe, which depends on Russia for its energy needs, how it would pay for this war? More details will be revealed in the coming episodes. If you want to give your opinion or any suggestion, then our WhatsApp number 0332 8410 537 is available. Give your feedback, like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon if you want to get notifications of the videos. Thanks for watching Tarazoo. Bye.